The Great Abandonment. The emergency alert pierced through the quiet hum of the UES Prometheus bridge like a blade through silk. Captain Elena Vasquez set down her morning coffee and watched as the holographic display materialized before her command chair. The seal of the Galactic Assembly rotated slowly, its crystalline surface catching the blue light of distant stars. Elena had seen this symbol countless times over her 15 years of service. Humanity had been part of the Assembly for nearly a century, contributing to galactic peace and prosperity through trade, exploration, and technological innovation. They were the youngest species in the coalition, but they had earned their place through determination and ingenuity. Today, that symbol felt different. Cold. Final. Captain, her communications officer, Lieutenant Marcus Chen, turned from his station with concern etched across his face. This is a priority alpha transmission directly from the Assembly High Council. It's being broadcast to every human vessel and colony simultaneously. Elena straightened in her chair. Priority alpha meant emergency conditions that threatened galactic stability. The last time such a broadcast had been issued was during the Andromedan War 30 years ago. Put it through, Lieutenant. The hologram shifted, revealing the familiar form of Counselor Thane Kyrith, the Zephyrian representative who had served as Assembly Speaker for the past decade. His usually composed demeanor seemed strained, his bioluminescent skin patterns flickering with what Elena recognized as barely contained anxiety. Citizens of the human colonies, Kyrith began, his melodic voice carrying across space to reach every human ear in the galaxy. It is with great deliberation that the Galactic Assembly has reached a unanimous decision regarding humanity's continued membership in our coalition. Elena felt her blood turn cold. Around the bridge, her crew had gone completely silent. The events at Terra Nova 3 days ago have demonstrated that humanity poses an unacceptable risk to galactic peace and security. The unprovoked destruction of the Meridian Research Station and the loss of 14,000 civilian lives cannot be overlooked or forgiven. Unprovoked, Elena whispered, her hands gripping the arms of her command chair. She had read the preliminary reports from Terra Nova. The Meridian Station had been conducting illegal experiments on human test subjects. When the local authorities had demanded access to investigate, the station's automated defenses had opened fire on the human colony below. Kyrith continued his pronouncement with the cold efficiency of a judge delivering a death sentence. Effective immediately, all human vessels, colonies, and installations must evacuate assembly space within 72 standard hours. Any human presence detected in assembly territory after this deadline will be considered an act of aggression and dealt with accordingly. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Elena stared at the space where the hologram had been, trying to process what she had just heard. Exile. Complete and total exile from the only galactic community humanity had ever known. Captain, her science officer, Dr. Sarah Walsh, spoke first. This has to be a mistake. The Assembly wouldn't just abandon us over a single incident. But Elena knew better. She had been monitoring Assembly politics for years, watching as some of the older species grew increasingly uncomfortable with humanity's rapid expansion and technological development. Humans reproduced faster than most species, adapted quicker to new environments, and had an unsettling tendency to find innovative solutions to problems that had stumped other civilizations for centuries. They weren't being exiled because of Terra Nova. They were being exiled because they were becoming too successful, too influential, too threatening to the established order. Elena activated her ship's long-range communications array. If they only had 72 hours, every human captain, governor, and administrator in the galaxy needed to know immediately. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the UES Prometheus broadcasting on all human frequencies. I'm transmitting the Assembly's exile order along with emergency evacuation protocols. All human vessels are to converge on Sanctuary Station in the Outer Rim for coordination. We have less than 3 days to save 7 billion people. Over the next 6 hours, Elena's communications console became a torrent of desperate voices. Colony governors reporting massive civilian panic as news of the exile spread. Merchant captains stranded in assembly space with no way to reach human territory in time. Military commanders asking for orders that Elena wasn't authorized to give. But humanity had faced extinction before, and they had always found a way to survive. Dr. Walsh approached her captain's chair with a data pad in hand. "Elena, I've been analyzing the Assembly's official statement about Terra Nova. Something doesn't add up." She handed over the pad, which displayed the timeline of the incident. "Look at these timestamps. According to the Assembly, the Meridian Station was destroyed at 1432 Galactic Standard Time. But our own sensor logs show that the first distress calls from the human colony began at 1428. Elena studied the data carefully. So the colony was under attack before the station was destroyed. Not just under attack. Completely destroyed. 14,000 people died in those 4 minutes, Elena. The station wasn't destroyed in an unprovoked assault. It was destroyed in retaliation." The implications hit Elena like a physical blow. The Assembly knew the truth about what had happened at Terra Nova. They knew that humans had acted in self-defense against an illegal research facility that had just committed genocide. And they had used that defensive action as justification for exile anyway. Elena stood up slowly, her mind already moving beyond anger to something more dangerous. Planning. "Sarah, how many human colonies are there in the Outer Rim territories?" 17 confirmed settlements, plus about 30 smaller outposts and research stations. They're all technically outside assembly space, but they're barely self-sufficient. What about the dark zones beyond Outer Rim? Dr. Walsh consulted her datapad again. Unmapped space, mostly. A few automated mining operations, some deep space research platforms. The Assembly considers those regions too dangerous and resource-poor to be worth claiming. Elena smiled for the first time since receiving the exile order. "Perfect. Marcus, get me a priority channel to Admiral Rebecca Stone at Sanctuary Station." The connection took several minutes to establish across the vast distances of space, but eventually Admiral Stone's weathered face appeared on Elena's personal display. Stone had been Elena's mentor at the Academy, and one of the finest strategic minds in the human fleet. "Elena," Stone said without preamble, "I assume you're calling about our new status as galactic outcasts. Among other things, Rebecca, how many ships do we have that can operate completely independently of assembly infrastructure?" Stone's eyes narrowed as she caught the implication behind the question. "You're thinking about more than just evacuation, aren't you? The Assembly just made 7 billion humans homeless based on a lie. They're counting on us to scatter, to fade away quietly in the dark corners of space, where we can't threaten their comfortable little empire." Elena stood and walked to her observation deck, looking out at the star field that had once represented opportunity and cooperation. Now it represented exile and abandonment. "But what if we don't scatter, Rebecca? What if we do the opposite?" Admiral Stone was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice carried the same hard edge that had made her legendary during the Outer Colony Wars. "You're talking about building something new out there in the dark. Something they won't see coming. Humanity has always been at its best when our backs are against the wall. We innovate, we adapt, we find solutions that no one else would even consider. The Assembly thinks they're getting rid of a problem by exiling us." Elena turned back to face the Admiral's image on her display. "But what if they've actually given us the greatest opportunity in human history? What if they've given us the freedom to become something better than they ever imagined?" Over the following weeks, as human ships and colonies evacuated assembly space in the largest migration in galactic history, Elena's words spread through the Exodus fleet like wildfire. Emergency became opportunity. Exile became liberation. The first human settlements in the dark zones were established within a month of the Exodus. Small, hidden colonies that existed completely off the galactic grid. But they were connected by an invisible network of communication relays and supply lines that the Assembly sensors couldn't detect. Dr. Walsh made the first breakthrough 6 months after the exile began. Working in a converted cargo bay that served as her laboratory, she discovered that certain rare elements found only in the dark zones could be used to create power sources far more efficient than anything the assembly possessed. "Elena, you need to see this," she called excitedly from her makeshift lab. "This energy output is impossible according to assembly physics. We're generating 3 times the power with half the fuel consumption." Elena examined the glowing power cell that Sarah held in her hands. It was no larger than her palm, but according to the readings, it contained enough energy to power a small city for a month. How is this possible? The assembly has been so focused on perfecting their existing technologies that they never bothered to explore the theoretical impossibilities. But humans have always been willing to try things that shouldn't work. Within a year, human settlements in the dark zones were not just surviving but thriving. New technologies emerged almost daily as necessity drove innovation at an unprecedented pace. Adaptive hydroponic systems that could grow food in any environment. Quantum communication networks that couldn't be intercepted or jammed. Manufacturing techniques that could build entire cities from raw asteroid material. Elena stood on the observation deck of Omega Station, the largest of the hidden human settlements, and watched as construction vessels assembled the framework for humanity's first truly independent shipyard. In the distance, she could see the running lights of hundreds of vessels, each one a testament to human ingenuity and determination. Her first officer, Commander Torres, joined her at the viewing port. "Captain, we've received word from the inner colonies. Production is ahead of schedule on every major project. The new ship designs are performing beyond all expectations." Elena nodded, watching as a sleek new vessel powered by Dr. Walsh's impossible energy cells glided past the station. It moved with a grace and speed that would have been unthinkable using assembly technology. "How long until we have a full fleet operational?" "At current production rates, 6 months for the first battle group, 18 months for full operational capacity." Elena smiled as she watched humanity's future taking shape in the darkness of space. The assembly had intended to scatter and weaken them by forcing them into exile. Instead, they had given humanity the freedom to grow beyond the limitations of galactic convention. "Commander, send a message to Admiral Stone. Tell her that the Silent Dominion is ready to move to the next phase." Torres raised an eyebrow at the name. "Silent Dominion, Captain." Elena turned away from the viewing port, her expression serious. "The assembly wanted us to disappear quietly into the dark. Well, we've been quiet long enough. It's time they learned what we've built in the shadows." As Elena walked back toward Omega Station's command center, she carried with her the satisfaction of a plan 25 years in the making finally approaching fruition. The assembly had exiled humanity thinking they were solving a problem. They had no idea they had just created their replacement. The hidden empire rises. 25 years after the Great Abandonment, the Galactic Assembly held its most critical session in over a century. The crystalline chambers of the Assembly Hall on Nexus Prime buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from 47 species gathered to address what many were calling the greatest threat to galactic stability since the formation of the Coalition itself. Councillor Thane Kyrith, now bearing the silver marks of advanced age across his bioluminescent skin, stood before the assembled delegates with a gravity that silenced even the most vocal critics. The holographic displays around the chamber showed star charts dotted with red warning markers, each one representing a mystery that the Assembly's greatest minds could not solve. "Honored delegates," Kyrith began, his once melodic voice now carrying the weight of profound concern. "What I am about to share with you will challenge everything we believe we know about the current state of galactic civilization." The first hologram showed the Outer Rim territories, regions that the Assembly had always considered barren and worthless. But now, those empty sectors pulsed with activity that their sensors could barely detect. 6 months ago, our deep space monitoring stations began detecting anomalous energy signatures from the dark zones beyond our territory. These readings suggested technological activity on a scale we believed impossible in those resource-poor regions. Kyrith gestured, and the display zoomed in on a sector that had been marked as uninhabitable for over 2 centuries. Where their charts showed empty space, the new scans revealed massive structures that defied conventional understanding of engineering and physics. 3 weeks ago, we lost contact with our research vessel Meridian's Hope while investigating these anomalies. Yesterday, we received this transmission. The chamber filled with static, then cleared to reveal the bridge of the missing research vessel. But instead of the Zephyrian crew that had been aboard when it disappeared, the command positions were occupied by figures that sent a shock of recognition through every delegate present. Humans. Captain Elena Vasquez, now bearing the insignia of the Silent Dominion fleet, looked directly into the camera with the same steady confidence she had shown as a young assembly officer decades earlier. Her hair had turned silver, and her face bore the lines of someone who had carried enormous responsibility for many years, but her eyes held a clarity and purpose that had only grown stronger with time. "Counselor Kareth," Elena said, her voice carrying easily across the years and the vast distances of space. "It's been a long time since we last spoke. I hope you'll forgive the dramatic nature of this contact, but we felt it was important to get your attention." The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs and alarmed discussions in dozens of languages. Kareth raised his hand for silence, his expression a mixture of amazement and growing dread. Elena continued as if she could hear the commotion in the assembly hall. 25 years ago, you exiled humanity from assembly space based on false evidence and manufactured fears. You told us we were too dangerous, too unpredictable to exist alongside civilized species. You gave us 72 hours to abandon everything we had built and disappear into the dark corners of the galaxy. She paused, allowing her words to sink in before delivering the statement that would reshape galactic politics forever. "We want to thank you for that exile, Counselor. It was exactly what humanity needed." The holographic display shifted to show the bridge's main view screen, revealing a sight that left the assembled delegates speechless. Stretching across the void of space was a fleet of vessels unlike anything in the known galaxy. They moved with impossible grace and speed, their hulls gleaming with materials that seemed to bend light itself. At the center of the formation was a ship so massive it dwarfed even the assembly's greatest dreadnoughts. "This is the DNS Prometheus Reborn," Elena announced, flagship of the Silent Dominion fleet. "She's powered by energy sources your scientists believe are theoretically impossible, constructed from materials that exist only in the regions you considered worthless, and crewed by humans who have spent 25 years learning what we can accomplish when we're not constrained by your limitations." Dr. Sarah Walsh, now bearing the title of Chief Science Advisor for the Silent Dominion, appeared beside Elena on the transmission. She had aged gracefully, her hair now completely white, but her mind clearly as sharp as ever. "The quantum energy matrices we developed allow us to generate power outputs that exceed assembly standards by a factor of 12. Dr. Walsh explained with the enthusiasm of a researcher who had been given unlimited resources to pursue impossible theories. "Our manufacturing capabilities can construct entire cities from raw asteroid material in a matter of weeks. Our communication networks operate on principles that make them completely undetectable to conventional sensors." She smiled with obvious pride. "And our population has grown to over 15 billion across 47 hidden colonies, each one more advanced than anything in assembly space." The implications of those numbers hit the delegates like a physical blow. In 25 years, humanity had not only survived their exile, but had grown into a civilization that potentially rivaled the assembly itself in size and clearly exceeded it in technological capability. Counselor Vexhai of the Andromedan Confederation rose from her seat, her crystalline form resonating with harmonics of disbelief. "This is impossible. Our surveys of those regions showed minimal resources and hostile conditions. How could any species build a civilization in such environments?" Elena's expression became almost sympathetic. "Counselor, you're still thinking like the assembly. You looked at those regions and saw obstacles. We looked at them and saw opportunities. dark matter concentrations that could be harvested for energy, asteroid fields that could provide unlimited raw materials, the absence of established infrastructure that would allow us to build exactly what we needed instead of working around what already existed. Admiral Rebecca Stone stepped into view beside Alina, now wearing the uniform of the Silent Dominion's Supreme Military Commander. Her presence sent another shock through the Assembly representatives who remembered her from the old days. We're here today not as exiles seeking red mission, but as representatives of a sovereign power offering alliance and cooperation. The Silent Dominion extends an invitation to all Assembly species to join us in building a new kind of galactic community. Dr. Walsh stepped forward again. We're willing to share our technological advances, our resource management techniques, and our innovative approaches to the challenges that face all spacefaring civilizations. But we're offering partnership, not charity. The weight of the moment settled over the Assembly Hall like a heavy blanket. For over a century, the Assembly had been the undisputed power in the galaxy, setting the rules and boundaries that all other species had to follow. Now they were being presented with evidence that their exiled outcasts had not only survived, but had grown into something that might be superior to everything they had built. Alina seemed to sense their thoughts. We know this is difficult to accept. You exiled us because you feared what we might become if allowed to grow within your system. Now you're discovering that we became something far greater by growing outside it. She gestured to something off-screen, and the display shifted to show dozens of other vessels approaching from different directions. Each one represented a different human colony, a different innovation, a different piece of the civilization that had been built in secret over the past quarter century. We're not here to conquer or replace the Assembly, Alina said firmly. We're here to offer an alternative, a chance to build something better together, based on mutual respect rather than hierarchical control. Admiral Stone stepped forward one final time. But make no mistake, we're also prepared to defend ourselves and our allies if threatened. The Silent Dominion may have been built on the principles of cooperation and innovation, but we learned our lessons from the Terra Nova incident. The transmission began to fade, but Alina's final words carried clearly across the vastness of space. You have 72 hours to consider our offer of alliance and cooperation. After that, the Silent Dominion will begin establishing formal diplomatic relations with individual Assembly species who wish to join us in building a better future. As the hologram disappeared, leaving the Assembly Hall in stunned silence, Kyrith realized that everything had changed. The exile that was meant to remove humanity as a threat to the established order had instead given them the freedom to become something that could replace that order entirely. The Assembly had thought they were solving a problem by banishing humanity to the dark corners of space. Instead, they had created the future of galactic civilization, and now that future was offering them a chance to be part of it. The question that remained was whether the Assembly would have the wisdom to accept the partnership being offered, or whether their pride would force them to oppose a power that had grown far beyond their ability to control. In the depths of space, the Silent Dominion fleet waited patiently for their answer, secure in the knowledge that regardless of what the Assembly chose, humanity had finally found its place among the stars, not as junior partners in someone else's empire, but as the founders of something entirely new. The exile was over. The real history of galactic civilization was just beginning.